Hey guys, tonight we sail far away from the comforts of home, across creaking timber decks and waves that never stop rolling, to explore one of the most bizarre and underappreciated corners of maritime history. What 16th century sailors actually ate on their long, long voyages. You wake in darkness, to the scent of damp wood, tar, and something else. Something less pleasant, like spoiled vinegar and socks that gave up hope. Your hammock swings gently, groaning as you shift. Above you, footsteps echo on deck. Around you, the rhythmic drip of seawater sneaking through old seams and oh, you're not aboard a luxury cruise. You're aboard a 16th century sailing ship. Cramped, crowded, crawling with, let's call them, bonus passengers. You stretch your legs, which hit a wooden barrel. Your elbow jabs something soft. It squeaks. You don't want to know. You swing out of your hammock, land on a damp plank, and steady yourself. It's barely dawn, but you already smell breakfast. Smoke, brine, maybe something vaguely bread adjacent. And your stomach growls, not from hunger but from suspicion. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time it is where you're listening. I love seeing where these sleepy journeys reach. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your day begins with a stumble up to the mess, or what passes for one. There's no tablecloth, no silverware, and certainly no menu. Instead, a sailor with more beard than patience slaps a chunk of something brownish onto a wooden plate and moves on. Hardtack, also known as ship's biscuit, that it looks like a cookie's mean older cousin, and biting into it might chip your tooth if you don't soften it first, usually by soaking it in water, beer, or anything that vaguely resembles liquid. Some sailors suck on it like a jawbreaker. Others just bang it with a knife until it crumbles. You've learned to check for weevils first. Yes, insects. They're not always visible, but if the biscuit wiggles, you've got company. Surprisingly, you don't always toss the bugs out. Protein is protein, and at sea, you learn to pick your battles. Historians still argue whether hardtack was ever meant to be edible in the traditional sense or if it was more of a survival tool disguised as food. What's certain is that it was cheap, durable, and endlessly resented. Sailors gave it nicknames like molar breakers and worm castles. You get used to it, kind of. Meals on board aren't about enjoyment. They're about not dying. You sit on an overturned barrel and gnaw your way through your portion, watching another sailor hammer his biscuit with a rock. The ship groans beneath your feet, timbers straining. Someone retches over the side. Another curses at a rat that just made off with a pea. And yet, in a strange way, this is normal. You take another bite. It tastes like dust and disappointment. But it's food. Sort of. The thing about hardtack is, it stays with you. Not just emotionally, though yes, your jaw will remember, but physically. It expands in your belly like ambition, and sits there, unbothered by your digestive efforts. And yet, day after day, it returns alongside its equally salty and much harder to love companion. Preserved meat. Today's offering? Salt beef. You think. It's a grayish chunk, vaguely spongy, with striations that suggest it was once part of a living thing. It's been brined to the point of defiance, so tough you could use it to patch the hull. You poke it with your knife. It pokes back. Preserved meat aboard 16th century ships was both blessing and curse. Salt was the savior. It allowed meat to travel without rotting. At least not quickly. But it also stripped it of any joy, leaving behind a fibrous brick soaked in brine. You'd soak it in water before boiling, which helped. A little, you think. You toss your chunk into the communal pot where it joins its brethren. Lumps of meat, a few despondent peas, and some scraps of onion, maybe. The cook, known primarily for his knife throwing and yelling, stirs it with something that may have once been a broom handle. This is your midday meal. You will eat it. You will regret it. But you will not complain. Because the cook hears everything. And besides, it's not like there are options. One time, a sailor tried to dry his own meat over a lantern. The resulting fire scorched half his hammock and singed the captain's wig. Since then, cooking experiments have been banned, along with sarcasm and unsolicited singing. You fish your meat out of the pot and sit on a barrel, chewing slowly. It resists. You persist. Salted pork is marginally better, especially if you close your eyes and pretend it's bacon. It isn't, but imagination helps. Historians still debate the nutritional value of these salted meats. On one hand, they provided crucial calories. On the other hand, they were often so riddled with gristle and tendon that sailors burned more energy chewing than they gained eating. There are diaries that describe crewmen boiling their meat 3 times just to make it gummy enough to swallow. You believe it. Someone nearby cracks a joke about meat with extra chew resistance, and it gets a laugh. Morale is currency here, and bad food makes for good humor. Later, you help carry another barrel of meat up from the hold. It smells ambitious. You try not to breathe too deeply. The barrel is crusted with salt, and you can't tell if the pinkish stuff inside is pork or optimism. Either way, it joins the pot. You scratch at your beard, newly acquired from a combination of salt wind and disinterest in grooming, and glance over the side of the ship. The ocean is endless. Meals are predictable, and hunger, somehow, always finds you just before mealtime, no matter how uninspired the menu. That night, a fellow sailor shares a story. He says once, a ship got stuck in the doldrums for weeks. No wind, no fish. The meat ran out and the biscuits turned to powder. They ate their leather belts. Then the rats. Then they looked at each other. You raise your eyebrows? Did they? No, he says. Someone remembered they had a barrel of sauerkraut. Saved the whole crew. You both laugh. Not because it's funny, but because laughing is easier than thinking too hard about it. Tomorrow, it's salted fish. Tonight, you dream of apples. You wake before the bell, and your tongue already feels like it's been coated in linen and then left in the sun. It's not thirst exactly. It's dread. Because you know what's coming. You step onto the deck and hear the telltale slosh of the water barrel being pried open. One of the younger lads dips a ladle, peers into the depths, and makes a face like he's just seen the afterlife. He hands you the cup anyway. And here it is, the day's drinking water or what's left of it. The water is green, or maybe brown depending on the light. It smells faintly of wood, definitely of mold, and carries a strange, persistent funk that resists description. But if someone bottled disappointment, this would be it. The barrel water situation was always a gamble. Sailors would depart with barrels freshly filled from wells or rain. But over time, days, weeks, months, the contents stagnated. No refrigeration, no purification tablets, just wooden barrels and good intentions. You tilt the cup, take the tiniest sip, and swallow like it's a dare. The flavor is ancient, like moss and iron had a baby. Still, you finish it, because you have to. Hydration wasn't optional. It was survival. And with beer rations running low, and wine long gone, this is what you've got. Some ships added vinegar to the water to make it taste less awful. Others flavored it with citrus peels, if they had any, which was rare. One particularly creative crew supposedly added crushed cloves. It didn't help, just made the water spicy and awful. You sit near the rail and try not to think about how many rats have danced on that barrel. Later in the morning, you get lucky. The cook ladles out something special. It's called burgoo, a watery porridge made from crushed biscuits, dried peas, maybe salted beef if the gods are generous. Today's version includes a mystery floating thing. Possibly a pea, possibly not. You stir it with your spoon, then eat it anyway. There's also beer. Or more precisely, ship's beer. It's weak, more like slightly bubbly bread water. But it's safer than the green stuff. You sip it slowly, savoring the way it doesn't fight you on the way down. Historians note that beer was the backbone of hydration during the Age of Sail. It didn't spoil as fast, and the alcohol content, though low, killed off some of the nastier microbes. The average sailor drank more beer than water. And now, so do you point one man near you brags about once drinking 6 pints before breakfast and still tying perfect knots. Another claims he brewed his own from rotten barley and dried orange peel. He's missing a tooth. You nod politely. The beer runs dry 2 days later, and suddenly the green water starts looking friendly again. But then, blessing of blessings, it rains. You all scramble like children, lifting pots, barrels, even hands to the sky. Sweet, cold, Clean rain pelts the deck, and for a moment, the ship feels alive again. You cup your palms and drink. It tastes like forgiveness. Someone strips off their shirt and dances. Another tries to wash. You just close your eyes and let the water soak into your scalp, your eyebrows. Your soul. One sailor says this rain is Athena's blessing. Another mutters that Poseidon's just laughing at you. Historians still argue whether rainwater harvesting was common practice or improvisation. There's evidence of ships with tarpaulins or canvas funnels rigged to catch it. Others relied on buckets and barrels and pure desperation. You just know it's the best thing you've tasted in weeks. That night, you sip from a fresh rain barrel and feel the sea rock you gently. It's not home. It's not comfort. But for now, it's enough. And tomorrow, you hear, there might be cheese. You try not to get your hopes up. You hear the word whispered like it's sacred. Cheese. A ripple goes through the crew. Heads lift. Eyes brighten. One man clutches his chest in mock reverence. Cheese is rare. Not because it was expensive, but because on ships like this, it didn't last long. It was meant to. It was packed tightly, salted, aged, wrapped and rewrapped. But time and sea air do terrible things to cheese. You line up behind a sailor who swears he once found a spider web in his slice. It played a lute, he says gravely. You laugh because it's easier than thinking about the truth. When your turn comes, the cook hands you a chunk. It's off-white, crumbly at the edges, and smells assertive. Not quite spoiled, but not spoiled either. You sniff it. You eat it anyway. Cheese on 16th century ships came mostly in hard, aged wheels, meant to resist rot. Ship's cheese, they called it, though ship's dare might have been more honest. Sometimes mold would grow, but if it wasn't blue or fuzzy, it was considered edible. Some sailors scraped off the mold. Others just ate it. You're in the second group now. The flavor is intense, salty, sour, with a hint of old boots. But it fills your belly. More importantly, it doesn't move. That's become your new baseline for success. Food that stays still. You sit under a coil of rope and nibble your wedge slowly. Later, someone tries frying a bit of cheese on a metal plate over the lamp. It drips. It smokes. It smells like sin. But it's warm, and for a moment you remember what food used to be like. Back when it was made with love instead of fear. Someone tries to pair it with hardtack. It doesn't help. Still, it's protein. It's sustenance. And in a place where flavor has mostly died of scurvy, it's something. Speaking of scurvy, that's the whisper beneath all whispers. You're not showing symptoms yet, but you've seen it. The bleeding gums, the sunken cheeks, the men who sleep more than they stand, whose legs ache so badly they can't walk. You try to chew slowly, hoping the cheese has something, anything, your body needs. Historians still argue whether ship's cheese provided enough vitamin C to hold off scurvy for a while. Some say it was completely useless. Others claim that, in its aged form, it carried trace nutrients that could delay the inevitable. Nobody knows for sure. You know this. It makes your stomach stop complaining for at least a few hours. A sailor next to you shares a secret. He's been saving a tiny nub of fruit, dried quince, smuggled aboard weeks ago. He lets you sniff it. It smells like another life. He doesn't share. You respect that. As night falls, the cook announces that tomorrow is P-Day. You groan along with the others, but you also know you'll eat every single one. Tonight. Though, you sleep with cheese on your breath and salt in your dreams. You dream of markets. You dream of wheels of Gouda stacked like gold. You dream of a kitchen that doesn't creak. And somewhere in the dark, a rat dreams beside you. Probably about your cheese. You pull your blanket tighter and hope you both get what you want. There's a saying aboard the ship. Peas don't ask questions. And today is P-Day. You're handed a wooden bowl filled with something pale green and vaguely lumpy. The texture falls somewhere between paste and regret. These are dried peas, soaked overnight and boiled into submission. If you're lucky, there's a hint of salt pork fat in the mix. If you're really lucky, it's actually pork and not just a memory of it. You sit cross-legged on the deck and take your first bite. It's warm. That's about the best you can say. Dried peas were a staple of maritime diets in the 16th century. Easy to store, slow to spoil, and they bulked out meals that otherwise leaned heavily on meat and biscuit. They were sometimes split, sometimes whole, always plain. But their power lay in what they did for the crew. They kept things moving, so to speak. A nearby sailor mutters, "God's green marbles." As he spoons his ration, someone else adds, "May they exit as swiftly as they entered." There's a chuckle across the line. Everyone knows the aftermath. And on a ship with one shared latrine and zero privacy, digestive velocity is everyone's concern. You try not to dwell on that. Instead, you focus on the quiet comfort of the meal. It's bland, yes, but somehow soothing. Like it's trying its best. One man near you adds crushed biscuit to his peas for texture. Another folds in a spoonful of pork drippings saved from last week. You're not that prepared. You're just grateful for something that didn't fight back. Historians still puzzle over the variety of legume-based meals on ships. Some logs describe elaborate stews with herbs and bacon bits. Others read more like cautionary tales. One captain claimed his cook could turn peas into 7 different textures. You hope to never meet that cook. The crew has a tradition. P-Day means storytelling. Something about the slow pace of chewing, the mildness of the meal, it makes people talk. Tales spill out over bowls. Old lovers, lost bets, mysterious ports where women danced with knives and nobody asked why. You listen. You laugh. You even share a story, something half-true about a pig that outwitted a priest. It earns you a spoon tap of approval. Later, the pot is scraped clean. A few sailors linger, debating whether the peas tasted better today than last week. Someone swears they tasted mint. You're skeptical. Still, your belly feels full. And that's no small feat out here. You wander toward the railing, breathing deep. The sea is calm today. Gentle swells rolling like the ship is being rocked to sleep by an unseen hand. You spot a flying fish skimming the surface. It arcs like a silver coin tossed from the sky. A sailor nearby throws a line into the water. Hopeful. Always hopeful. And just as you lean back against a coil of rope, your stomach rumbles. Loudly, you're not alone. A moment later, the latrine queue forms. The peas, as always, keep their promises. You're midway through your watch, leaning over the railing with a knotted stomach. Not from illness, but anticipation. Because today, they're fishing. That rare, glorious gamble when the sea might feed you something that doesn't require salt, vinegar, or prayer. You spot the cook preparing the line. A metal hook crudely sharpened, tied to coarse hemp cord. No rod, just hope. You volunteer. Why wouldn't you? The bait. A scrap of something unidentifiable. Possibly pork. Possibly something that once lived between deck boards. You lower the line and wait. Fishing on a 16th century vessel was part survival, part entertainment, and part ritual. You could go weeks with nothing, then haul in a feast in a single afternoon. Of course, feast is relative. What you really wanted was freshness. It takes an hour, but the line jerks. You brace. You haul. You pray. And then, magic. A silvery fish, wriggling and furious, hits the deck. A mackerel. Everyone cheers. Not because it's big, but because it's alive. It's a reminder that food once had eyes and choices. The cook snatches it up and grumbles. No seasoning, just flame. Fine by you. It's gutted, scaled, slapped over a flat iron plate. Within minutes, the smell draws half the crew. You get the head because you caught it. You don't argue. It's oily, sharp, and glorious. Historians say fresh fish was the sailor's dream, rare, fleeting, unpredictable. Some captains allowed fishing days when rations were low or winds were slow. Others banned it altogether, calling it a waste of time and bait. You understand both perspectives. That fish? It's gone in 4 bites. Another sailor once claimed he saw a flying fish land right in a man's cup. The man drank it anyway. Whether it's true or not, you now eye every splash with wild optimism. Later that afternoon, someone does catch a flying fish. It thuds onto the deck like a blessing. People crowd to see it. It's cleaned, sliced thin, and shared ceremonially, each sailor getting a sliver. Yours tastes like ocean and freedom. For dessert, dried figs, maybe. If someone's willing to share, you chew one slowly, savoring its sweetness. It's the only thing on board that reminds you of land. You remember a meal back home, lamb, flatbread, wine. And now half a fish head, a fig, and salt water for company. Somehow you're still thankful. Later, someone proposes a stew. All hands contribute: dried peas, a heel of hardtack, one withered carrot, the bones from the mackerel, and, surprise, a bit of preserved onion. It all goes into the pot. Hours later, it's more broth than brilliance. But you drink it down like nectar. Historians still argue whether these ad hoc meals were morale boosters or just desperation in disguise. One sailor's journal describes a stew of mysteries that changed color overnight. Another calls it gut glue. You're somewhere in the middle. Tonight you go to sleep full, not stuffed, but satisfied. Your hammock creaks. The ship sways. You dream of fish leaping into your hands, and for once, the sea seems generous. You awaken to a ruckus, someone shouting, "Fire!" and another shouting, "Sorry," which, on a ship, is never a comforting combo. Turns out, the cook tried to make something special. A pudding. Not the creamy, dessert kind you're thinking of. This is sailor's pudding, a culinary cryptid made of stale biscuit crumbs, suet if there's any, a handful of dried peas, and whatever vaguely sweet thing can be scrounged from the darkest corner of the ship's pantry. It's stuffed into a cloth, boiled for hours, and then unwrapped like it might contain a miracle. Today's version does not. But you eat it anyway. Because it's different. Because it's warm. Because it's not green water or salted horror. And because somehow these strange bundles of mashed up leftovers start to feel like comfort. The cook calls it surprise stew if it's too wet, and pudding if it holds its shape. Either way, you don't ask what's inside. That's the first rule. A few sailors gather around to compare textures. One says his slice tastes like cloves. Another says he found a bone. A third says he's saving half for later, then eats it anyway. You sit on the edge of the deck, steam rising from your bowl into the cold morning air, and you try to chew slowly. Historians note that shipboard puddings were a kind of culinary recycling. Scraps turned sacred by boiling. Some logs describe puddings flavored with lemon peel or rum if supplies allowed. Others, just biscuit and drippings. You're fairly certain this one involves optimism. The beauty of these puddings is their unpredictability. They're every meal you've ever had, smushed together and made edible through sheer effort. You learn that the cook reserves bits for these experiments, calls it saving flavor for a rainy day. It's both strategy and superstition. Some say the best puddings came before storms. Others say they caused the storms. This one tastes like it might do either. Someone nearby taps their spoon against the bowl and says, "Next time we add fish." Everyone groans. But you smile. The pudding fills your belly, warms your fingers, makes the ship feel a little less cruel. Later, you spot a rat eyeing the crumbs near the galley. You lock eyes. There's a moment of mutual respect. Then it scampers off. Probably has its own pudding plans. Night falls, and the wind picks up. You wrap yourself in your threadbare cloak and watch the waves turn silver under moonlight. A sailor hums a song about plum pudding. No one's seen a plum in months. Still, the song helps. You fall asleep thinking of spices, raisins, butter melting on a warm slice of something soft. When you wake, it's back to biscuit. But for one night, you dined like a king. A very confused, slightly constipated king. Your gums are tender today. You press your tongue against your teeth and flinch. No bleeding yet, but you know what's coming if you're not careful. Scurvy. The quiet predator of the sea. It starts with soreness, fatigue, maybe a little swelling. Then it escalates: bleeding gums, loose teeth, bruises from nothing, and bones that feel like they're losing the will to hold you together. You don't want to go down that path. And so, when the quartermaster announces that today's rations include a lemon, you feel something close to love. It's not a whole lemon. That would be madness. No, it's a slice. One wedge for every third sailor. You're in a group of 3 and you draw short straw. So, you get the rind, you chew it anyway. It tastes like sun and salvation. Citrus was, even then, becoming known as a scurvy fighter. Sailors might not have understood the science, but they knew the results. Fresh fruit made people feel better. Lime, lemon, even bitter orange, it didn't matter. If it grew on a tree and had juice, it was sacred. Some captains stockpiled citrus. Others didn't. Some believed it only worked fresh. Others thought vinegar or pickled vegetables would do the trick. Historians still argue whether early naval records show a real understanding of vitamin C deficiency or just coincidental luck. What's certain is this: if you got citrus, you hoarded it, traded it, maybe even prayed to it. You once saw a sailor kiss a lemon. No one mocked him. After the wedge, you feel clearer, sharper, like your bones just got a memo from headquarters saying, "Hang in there." The next meal includes citrus gruel, a watery mess of mashed biscuit and lemon rind. It's awful. It's perfect. You scrape your bowl clean. Later, someone sneaks you a candied orange peel from his secret stash. You offer your wool socks in return. He declines. He's not crazy, but he lets you sniff it. You nearly cry. That night, the old cook shares a story. He once sailed to a port where lemons were piled high in baskets, sold for almost nothing. He bought as many as he could carry. The next day, half the crew got drunk and ate them all. "We didn't get scurvy," he says. "We just got sticky." The memory makes him smile. You lie in your hammock and wonder what it would be like to eat 3 whole lemons. Maybe in a bath. Maybe with honey. You fall asleep grinning like a madman. Tomorrow it's back to biscuit. Maybe peas. But tonight, you are a sailor blessed by citrus. The mood on the ship turns sour, and for once, it's not because of the food, it's because the food has gone bad. You see it first in the faces. Wrinkled noses, narrowed eyes, sideways glances at the stew pot. A sailor prods a piece of salt pork with the tip of his knife. It shudders slightly. Someone else pokes a bucket of peas and mutters something about movement. Spoiled food.it happens. And on a ship, it happens fast. The galley smells worse than usual. You'd gotten used to the perfume of wet wood, sweat, and faint mildew. But now there's a new note in the mix. Something sweet and sickly, like meat that's thinking about being alive again. The cook slams the pot lid down with a growl. You'll eat it or starve. You consider the options. You eat it. You regret it. Welcome to the dark side of rations. Spoilage was a constant threat aboard long voyages. Despite salting, smoking, and drying, food could and often did turn. Barrels leaked. Rats chewed through sacks. Mold bloomed. Sometimes the only way to test edibility was to feed it to someone and wait. Historians still debate whether early sailors developed immunity to mild food poisoning or just got really good at vomiting on cue. You're not immune. But you are hungry. Still, the tension is rising. One man refuses his portion and stomps away. Another curses the cook. A third loudly claims the meat tasted like revenge. There's murmuring in the mess. Forks clatter harder. A ladle is thrown, not at anyone, just thrown. The ship is still. No wind. No forward motion. Only bad meat and bad moods. And so, someone proposes the unthinkable. A food vote.it begins as a joke, but quickly becomes real. A circle forms. Each sailor votes whether to confront the cook or continue choking down the mystery stew. It's close. Too close. You vote yes, fix the food. But just as things reach boiling point, the captain steps in. Not with shouting. With a gesture. He produces a small sack of flour and a bottle of old oil. No one knows where he got them. Maybe his private stash. Maybe bribes. Doesn't matter. He hands them to the cook and says, "Make something warm and different." It's a truce. The cook mumbles, grumbles, then bakes flat cakes. Flour, water, oil, and a pinch of salt. They're hot, slightly burnt, and they taste like hope. Everyone quiets. Historians say food disputes caused more mutinies than punishments did. When bellies turned, so did tempers. Some voyages ended early, not from storm or disease, but from bad morale brewed in the belly. You chew your cake slowly, grateful. Later, a sailor plays a low tune on a broken fiddle. Someone hums along. Someone else quietly burps and pats his chest like it's a peace offering. Things settle. For now. Tomorrow, the stew might still taste like feet. But tonight, it's warm, and the ship hasn't burned down. You'll take the win. Port. The word spreads through the ship like the smell of fresh bread. Only there's no bread. Just hope. You're docking. Not home. Not anywhere familiar. But land, which means firm ground, maybe a bath, and most importantly, New food. You peer over the side as the sails are trimmed and ropes are thrown. The harbor is alive with color and noise. Market stalls, shouting vendors, exotic birds in cages, goats tied to posts, children darting between barrels. You haven't seen this much motion that wasn't swaying in weeks. You're given a few hours of shore leave with one instruction: don't eat anything too weird. You ignore that immediately. The first thing you try is a skewered meat stick from a vendor who grins and winks as he hands it to you. The spicy, chewy, and definitely not salt pork. You don't ask what it is. It's delicious. Then a fruit you can't name. Bright orange, tangy, bursting with juice that runs down your chin like you've forgotten how to eat with dignity. You haven't smiled this wide in weeks. Historians note that sailors in foreign ports often traded, bartered, or begged for unfamiliar foods. Sometimes they made excellent finds: coconuts, tamarind, dried fish spiced with local herbs. Other times, disastrous. There's a famous log entry about a sailor who mistook soap for candy. He did not finish the bar. Your own adventure continues with a visit to a spice merchant. The smells, cardamom, cinnamon, garlic, and clove, hit you like a memory of real kitchens. The merchant sees your longing and hands you a pinch of something red. For stew, he says. You hand over a button. He nods like that's fair. Back aboard, you gather with your crewmates and reveal your prize. Tonight, the cook makes port stew. It contains dried peas, maybe rat, and your mysterious red spice. It's incredible. The entire deck smells like someone lit a candle in a bakery. You eat slowly, reverently. The stew is gone in minutes. Someone jokes that maybe the spice was cursed. Someone else suggests you cook every meal from now on. You decline. But the moment sticks. You dream of spice now, how something so small can change everything. Historians still argue about how much sailors influenced global cuisine. Some say they were vectors of flavor, carrying seeds and sauces across oceans. Others say they were just hungry men making do with what they could barter. You think it's both. You know this. That little red powder made the ship feel new. Before you leave port, you trade one of your spare socks for a twist of dried herb wrapped in banana leaf. You don't even know what it is. You just want the memory of flavor to last a little longer. The sails fill again. The wind picks up. The dock disappears. But in your pocket is a pouch of hope, and you have a plan. Next time the peas show up, you're ready. There's a smell drifting up from the captain's quarters. Not the usual damp wool and disappointment smell. This is buttery. You pause on the stairs, nose tilted like a dog catching a scent on the wind. Something rich, warm, possibly bread. Definitely unfair. The captain is eating differently. You knew it already, of course. Officers had their own rations, often supplied privately. Dried fruits, wine, preserved meats that didn't glow in the dark. But now you smell the difference, and it hits you deep. You sit with the crew, gnawing your biscuit and boiled pea stew, while upstairs, the captain dines on civility. Someone nearby grumbles. He's probably got a roast chicken and a pear pie up there. You laugh. But then someone adds, you know, the steward lets scraps go missing. If you ask right, your ears perk. That night, you hang around the galley longer than usual. You help the steward sweep. You compliment his shirt. Eventually, you lean in and ask, anything special? He glances both ways, then pulls something from behind a crate. A figure wrinkled, half-dried. Perfect. You eat it slowly, like it's a sin. Historians confirm, officers ate better. It wasn't about rank, it was about money. Captains brought personal stores. Some even had their meals cooked separately. Sailors occasionally borrowed scraps. Some cooks looked the other way. Others demanded bribes, buttons, rope, secrets. You start doing odd jobs for the steward. Polishing lanterns. Sharpening knives. Fetching things he doesn't want to fetch. In return, one dried apricot. A spoonful of honeyed wine. Once, a scrap of hard cheese with a vein of something that might be mold or genius. The taste makes your toes curl. One evening, you're gifted a slice of soft bread. Real. Fluffy. Sweet from raisins. You almost cry. But guilt creeps in. You remember your crewmates still chewing moldy biscuits. their teeth gritted, their eyes tired. So you do something unthinkable. You share. Just a bite, passed between 5 hands, each one holding it like treasure. The bread vanishes in seconds, but the feeling lingers. Later, a rat makes off with your pouch of spice from port. You curse it softly, then laugh. It's the price of balance. The steward winks at you the next morning. Captain's got dates, he whispers, and just like that, your chores double. Historians still debate how much class disparity influenced shipboard morale. Some say it fostered resentment. Others argue it inspired ambition. You're not sure. But you know this. A dried fig can lift a soul, and a shared crust, under the stars, tastes better than any banquet you've eaten alone. It begins with a scratching sound. Tiny, persistent, close to your ear. You turn in your hammock, groggy. Maybe it's the wind, or a rope rubbing, or nope, it's a rat. You bolt upright just in time to see the creature leap down from a beam and disappear into the darkness, tail twitching like punctuation. It's carrying something. You think it's a biscuit. That was your biscuit. Rats are everywhere on the ship. They skitter across beams. They nest in barrels. They nibble on boots, rope, even hair. They are both pests and an option. Yes, it's come to that. Not yet for you, mind. You still have your daily portion of salt beef sadness. But you've heard the whispers. When rations run low, when supplies rot, when even the biscuits start growing their own beards, people start to wonder, how bad could it be? You find out when one of the crew actually catches one. The cook, with all the flair of a man past caring, skins it, spits it, and roasts it over the coals. The smell is shockingly edible. You get a bite. Just a bite. It's chewy, a little gamey, and, blessedly, not salted. You chew it thoughtfully, thinking of all the rats you've cursed. Now, gratitude, a strange, greasy kind of reverence. Historians still argue how common it really was for sailors to eat rats. Some diaries describe it matter-of-factly. Others treat it like a last resort. Some claim it was taboo, while others recorded recipes involving onions, when onions were still a thing that existed. You're not proud. But you're not sick, either. And that's something. Later that week, a bet arises. Who can catch the biggest rat? It becomes a game, a distraction, and oddly, a bonding ritual. You win once. You name your prize dinner. There's laughter, but also tension, because every rat caught means one fewer mouth sneaking into your rations at night. It means a tiny bit more control over this floating chaos. The cook eventually bans rat meals. They'll hear us talkin', he says, dead serious. They'll change tactics. You're not sure if he's joking. Rats aside, food is officially low. The barrels are echoing. The cheese is gone. The biscuit sacks grow lighter by the day. You spot more people scraping their bowls. Fewer jokes now. Fewer stories at mealtime. But you still have that one fig you hid under your mattress. You think of sharing it. You decide to wait. Just one more day, just in case. Landfall. Not the kind where you disembark to cheers and fresh loaves, but the kind where your boots hit muddy sand and you're handed a shovel. Resupply. A small island. Maybe charted. Maybe not. It's unclear if it has a name or just a nickname given by sailors with no imagination. Rat Haven, Salt Bay, or, as your crew calls it, better than starving. There's no port, no welcome, just trees, rocks, and the possibility of something edible. You're part of the foraging party. It's hot. The sun hits differently on land, less forgiving. You sweat within minutes, your shirt sticking to you like regret. The first thing you find? A bush full of berries. Someone asks, are they poisonous? Someone else shrugs. Only one way to find out. You don't eat the berries, you head inland. There you find it wild garlic, some herbs, even a small grove of what might be yam. The excitement is palpable. Sailors are bent over in the dirt, giggling like children who just found gold. You gather armfuls. Back at camp, the cook surveys the hall like a judge at a very sad food contest. But he nods. He starts chopping, mixing, boiling. Tonight's meal is stew. Again. But this time, It's different. It smells of earth and green and something alive. Someone passes around a handful of sea salt scraped from shoreline rocks. Another found wild onions. You toss in the dried herb bundle from last port. It feels like a potion, not a meal. You eat under starlight, cross-legged in the sand. The ship floats just offshore, dark and waiting. And for one blessed hour, you're grounded, rooted. Federal historians often overlook the improvisation of sailors ashore. But some logs mention these rare meals, fresh forage turned into something hopeful. Often, these stops were as much for morale as they were for food. You believe it now. You see it in the smiles, the shared spoons, the second helpings. You fall asleep that night on land, in a bed of dry grass and old canvas. And you dream not of cities or banquets, but of stew. Real stew, made with things that grew in dirt instead of barrels. Tomorrow you'll set sail again. But tonight you belong to Earth. Back at sea, everything feels louder. The creak of the mast, the slap of waves, the groan of the hull. Or maybe it's just that your belly is full of real food for once, and your senses have come roaring back to life like a bear out of hibernation. You breathe deeper. Even the biscuit seems slightly less hostile this morning. But the wind shifts. And with it, the mood. It starts with small things. One sailor muttering about biscuit portions. Another accusing someone of hoarding dried peas. A third one swears someone swapped his flask of vinegar with bilge water. No one laughs. You know the signs. Meal times become quiet. Watch rotations tense. The cook clutches his ladle like a weapon. It's not the food. Not really. It's the fear. Of dwindling supplies. Of another storm. Of another week without land or lemon or anything that doesn't taste like salt and sadness. The captain holds a meeting. Talks of rationing. Of fair shares. Of discipline. No one argues. But no one claps either. That night, the cook tries to cheer everyone up with something he calls captain's crumbs. A mash of biscuit powder, dried fig bits, and melted fat, pressed into balls. You're handed one. It crumbles before you can bite it. But the taste, sweet, salty, weirdly comforting. Someone starts to hum. Another joins in. It's an old sea tune. Something about a girl with too many brothers and not enough sense. It has 17 verses and a chorus that changes every time. You all sing it anyway. Historians argue whether music mattered more than meals during long voyages. Some say it kept morale higher than full bellies could. Others say it was just another form of passing time. But tonight you feel the truth of it. Your stomach is half full. Your heart is more than that. Later, the stars come out. You sit near the galley with a crewmate, sharing the last of the crumb balls. He tells you about his favorite meal from back home, stewed goat with garlic and herbs. You tell him about warm bread pulled from a clay oven. You both close your eyes and remember, and that memory, it's almost enough. The sky is a soft gray bruise, dawn leaking in slowly. You sit on a barrel, chewing the last of your biscuit with quiet reverence. Not because it's good, it's not, but because it's the last one. After this, it's truly the edge of things. No more hardtack. No more salted pork. No more tea brown peas masquerading as meals. But something has shifted. You feel it in your shoulders, your breath, the way your fingers grip the rim of your mug like it's an anchor. You've been out for weeks, months. A quarter of your memories now take place over wood, salt, and endless water. And today, there's land ahead, real land. You see it first as a blur on the horizon, a dark smear between sky and sea, then trees, smoke, the crooked tooth of a church spire. The deck stirs with murmurs. No cheers, just awe. Like you've spotted a myth. The sails adjust and the harbor swells closer. The smells change. Salt is still there, but underneath it, earth, grass, baking bread. Your stomach tightens, not with hunger, but with relief. When the ship docks, there are orders, ropes, crates to shift, inventory to count. You obey on autopilot, every muscle humming with the anticipation of the moment you can step off, walk somewhere that doesn't move underfoot. You finally do. The dock planks creak. You stand still for a long time, letting your legs relearn stillness. Someone hands you something. Bread. Fresh, soft, golden-edged bread. You stare at it. You break it open. Steam curls up into the cold morning air. And then you bite. It's everything. The crust shatters. The inside is tender, warm, yeasty, sweet. You sit right there on the dock and eat every bite, crumbs falling onto your boots, not caring who sees. Historians still debate what foods made the greatest impact on returning sailors, whether it was fruit, wine, meat. But sailors, in their journals, they talk about bread. Because it wasn't just food. It was proof that land was real again, that you'd survived, that your body still knew how to want comfort, and that comfort still wanted you back. As you walk away from the ship, full for the first time in memory, you carry nothing but your coat and your stories. You'll tell them someday. Not all at once, not in grand speeches, just in the way you chew, slowly, gratefully. And maybe, just maybe, you'll never curse a crust again. And now, your sea legs soften. You're not walking. You're floating gently in the memory of hammocks and biscuit, of soft winds and rough meals, of songs hummed beneath starlight while chewing on something barely called food. Let it all go now, the salt in the air, the groan of the hull, the taste of cheese too brave for land. Let the quiet of the galley drift behind you like smoke curling up from a burned stew pot. You're ashore now. The ship has faded, tucked away in the fog of stories and gentle dreams. You're sitting with warm bread in hand. The kind that crumbles slightly when torn, soft in the middle, still humming with heat. Your fingers are clean. Your spoon is still. Your heart is full. You are full. Let your shoulders drop. Let your eyes close. Let the waves grow distant. There is no hunger here, only memory, only rest. The story is done, and so are you. Good night.